One of the things that we did at Gen Con that was absolutely amazing, I've never done before, something called True Dungeon. And so I am a neophyte when it comes to these things. I don't play Dungeons and Dragons. I play some board games. I like a little Pandemic and Ticket to Ride and stuff like that from time to time. A little Alhambra is all good. But once you got to break out the dice and the pencil and the paper, if it's not Yahtzee, it's a little bit much for me. With character stats and all those sorts of things, I never really got into it. I played some RPGs on video games where I don't do the math. That's fine, but. So what this was, True Dungeon, from sort of the neophyte point of view, I was told it was a little bit like LARPing, which is live action roleplay, but it's more like Dungeons and Dragons, but with costumes and characters. I didn't know fully what to expect. For one thing, I didn't know if we were supposed to dress up. But once I did it, I have to say it's amazing. I highly recommend True Dungeon. It's very popular, so I might come to regret giving it this endorsement because I don't need the competition and trying to book things in the future. I definitely want to go back to Gen Con. I am sold. And I definitely want to do as much True Dungeon as I get my hands on. That is fun. It's like $80 per session, but it is worth it. And here's why. Here's what True Dungeon really is. What it really is a series of 7 escape rooms. That's the way I think that you market it to people who aren't into D&D, because that's what it was for me. Every room you go into with your team of however many other people are there, generally 8, plus John and I for 10. So a group of 10 people, you go into a room and you either have to defeat a monster or you have to solve a puzzle. So solving the puzzle is cool. That's escape room type stuff. There'll be some clues. There'll be a person there in character, in costume. Maybe there'll be an audio cue, either music or something will be read out. It's really quite well done. It's amazing. And then the combat, you are given a bag of tokens prior to going into the True Dungeon, and then you're able to basically equip your character with items from the tokens. And you keep the tokens from game to game, so the more you play, the greater variety you have, and you might have better items, defenses, weapons, and stuff like that. That part can be a little intimidating, but for the most part, everyone that I was in that... Because you go into a room and you set up your character, and it's actually pretty easy. You put tokens down in squares. It's like that. But the other people there were really quite helpful. They would lend you a token that might help you do better, because you're all on the same team. It's cooperative, which is lovely. I mean, some of my favorite games are cooperative. I mentioned Pandemic earlier. Forbidden Desert, Forbidden Island. Those are fun games. I love the cooperative stuff. And so they'll help you, and you give the token back after it's been recorded. The only token you need to really keep on you, other than certain things I'm still learning about, like single-use items, is your weapon. So you put your weapon into a little disc, a little round thing that's kind of like a mini shuffleboard puck. And so the combat is, there's a picture of the thing you're fighting on a board, on a table, and you slide it, your weapon, down there, and depending on where it lands, it may or may not hit, and it may or may not do a certain amount of damage. It depends on how strong your weapon is and where it landed. That's how combat works, and it's pretty simple. You slide and go, slide and go, slide and go. And so if you're a newbie trying out True Dungeon for the first time, I recommend being either the barbarian or the fighter, because there's nothing too complicated about that. Whereas if you're like a cleric, you're healing people, you only have so many heals, you got to decide. That's a little bit more complicated, and so I would recommend that for after you've done it a couple of times, if at all possible. But it was a lot of fun, and there was one time where it was actually my first one. And I sit down and John says, look, be the barbarian because it's your first time and that'll be easier. I said, sure. And so I get my barbarian all kitted out and I'm ready for it and okay. And this guy comes in and he was absolutely convinced that he should be the barbarian. And apparently there was a message board for Gen Con where he went in and called it. Even though, and I went afterwards to this message board and they say you can't do that functionally. So anyways, he was so angry and he was being a petty little child and he easily had 20 years on me. At least 10, maybe 20. And so he's sitting there and he's stewing to his friend. I don't know, barbarian. I called it. That should be mine. And I'm like, and everyone else in the room is just kind of glaring at him. They're doing their own thing. They're all being collaborative, but he's not wanting to speak to anyone. And I'm like, this guy is going to ruin this experience. I spent $80, between John and I, $160 to do this. And this petulant child is going to make it an intolerable experience. And we're all going to be have our hackles up the whole time. This is going to suck. But somewhere between finishing character creation and going into the training room, he became the nicest guy. It's the weirdest thing. And that's one of the things, people in Indianapolis, super nice. People who play board games are often pretty nice too. There's the odd anomaly here and there, a table captain who's a jerk who won't tell you the rules because he wants to win, stuff like that, those are rare. So when you get the Venn diagram that has the crossover of people in Indianapolis and people who play board games, you'll find some of the nicest people you've ever met. And so this guy, even though he was only a little bit of a jerk, was so off-putting because I'm surrounded by all these really, really nice people. Anyways, as soon as we move into the training room, suddenly he's laughing, he's helping people out, giving advice, being flexible, thank God. And so, he kind of grew up in that moment, or he just decided to have fun, and thank God, please choose happiness whenever you have the choice. Being happy is a choice. And so he did choose to have some fun, and because it's his money too, right? So, thank God for that. And so it all worked fine. So again, people who are doing True Dungeon for the first time ever, there's a training room where you can practice sliding those shuffleboard pucks, the little ones. And also, like, some of the magic casters, you might have to memorize something, shapes or whatever. And so that gives you time to memorize your spells, basically, before going in. And so each room lasts, I believe, 12 minutes. A tone will sound, I think, at that 6-minute mark, so you know when you're halfway through. And if you don't complete it in time, they push you out to the next room and your character takes damage. If you take too much damage, you run out of hit points, you're functionally dead, so you can't participate, you can only watch. However, in my case, I played 3 games, and really characters only died in the last room of one of the games, including mine, because we lost that one. So they were able to, stick with it the whole way through. And there are different difficulty levels you can play on. And we did normal every single time. And so that kept everyone engaged, even when there was like 4 new players and 2 super experienced people, and then like John and I in the middle. It was always fun. And then there was one session where almost everyone but John and I were cosplayers, and they were just so great. They were bubbly and funny and fun, and they laughed at my jokes, and so I like that. But no, like, it was just, they had the greatest attitude, and so playing with them was. And even though the other groups were fun, but playing with them was like a whole nother level of fun. I love cosplayers. After that experience, I wrote a blog post. If you check us out on Tumblr, we're vacationimpossible.tumblr.com. You can see some of my blog posts there, the ones that I don't put on Patreon. Most of mine go on Patreon for the patrons, but every now and then I'll put sort of a freebie out on Tumblr, and so that was one of the ones, because I just wanted to give a shout out to just cosplayers in general. That whole community and culture around cosplaying, it seems so inclusive and so positive and so much fun, so full of energy. It's so creative and vibrant that I massively respect it. I admire it. I look up to it. And, 10 years ago, I thought it was weird. And so for that perspective, I apologize. I couldn't have been more wrong. But I also think that the culture around it has evolved and become more, body positive and accepting and things like that. And I think that's all fantastic. So, yay cosplayers. If you hang out with cosplayers, they're fun. Cosplayers have more fun. Yeah. And so anyways, we had our sort of 4 or 5 days in Indianapolis, which was fantastic. So thank you. I hope this was enjoyable. Please, as I've said many times, reach out to us in a variety of ways. You can email us, hit us up on social media. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. It helps us unlock additional functionality. Give our videos a little thumbs up so more people can see them, and comment, because we love to engage with you guys. We've learned so much from the comments on YouTube videos. It's amazing. And we've also, frankly, helped clear up some misunderstandings that way as well. People thought things worked a particular way and they didn't. So, yeah, thank you so much. This has been a blast. But you never know, travel opportunities crop up all over the place. So thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.